I still remember that Christmas night like it's happening in front of my eyes. The house smelled of roasted turkey and cinnamon, and the old wooden floor in my father's place in Ohio creaked every time someone moved. Outside, snow covered the street like a white blanket, and the small town lights of our corner of the United States of America glowed through the frosted windows. My son, Leo, sat beside me at the table, swinging his legs and staring at the candles as if they were tiny stars he could touch. I kept smoothing his hair, more to calm myself than to fix it. I could already feel something heavy in the air, something waiting to fall on me. My father, Robert, sat at the head of the table, wearing his dark sweater and that strict look he used when he wanted to seem strong. My sister, Emily, sat to his right in a neat red dress, with her hair tied back and her lips painted perfectly. She had always been the good daughter, the one who followed every rule, chose a safe job, and stayed close to home. I was the one who left, the one who sang in bars in Cleveland for tips and small paychecks in dollars, the one who came back with tired eyes and a guitar on her back. I could feel her watching me, like she was waiting for the next reason to say I had ruined my life. We started dinner like it was any other Christmas. My father said a short prayer, talking about family and blessings, and I tried not to choke on the words. The turkey went around, the potatoes, the gravy. Leo whispered, "Mom, this is so good," and I smiled at him, pretending everything was normal. I told myself to enjoy the meal, to just make it through one night in peace. But deep down I knew my father had something to say. He had been quiet all day, and his eyes had that hard shine I remembered from every time he told me I was a disappointment. Halfway through dinner, he put down his fork and knife with a sharp, careful sound. My heart started beating faster, because I knew this was it. He looked straight at me, then at Leo, and then back at me. The room seemed to shrink around us, the voices and soft music in the background fading away. Then he spoke, slowly and clearly, like he wanted every word to cut deep. "You," he said, "a singer, and your child will have to leave home." For a few seconds, nobody moved. The only sound I heard was the ticking of the old clock on the wall and the soft clink of Emily's glass as she adjusted it. Leo kept eating, not really understanding, humming a little Christmas tune he had heard on TV. My father's words hung over the table like a heavy cloud. I looked at Emily, and she smiled, a small, cold smile, as if this was the ending she had been waiting for. It stung more than I thought it would. Inside, something broke, but no tears came. I had cried too many times in this house when I was younger, and I refused to do it again. I took a slow breath and felt a strange calm wash over me. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was strength I didn't know I still had. I pushed my chair back and stood up. "Okay," I said, my voice steady. "Okay, we'll leave." Leo looked up at me, confused. "Mom, where are we going?" "We're going to find our own place," I told him. "A better place. Just you and me." I didn't argue with my father. I didn't ask him why. I didn't give Emily the satisfaction of seeing me beg. I walked to my old bedroom, packed a small suitcase for Leo and one for myself, grabbed my worn guitar, and counted the money in my wallet. I had $430 in total. Not much in America, not enough for a real house, but it was all I had. I pressed the bills together, as if holding them tighter could make them grow. We stepped out of my father's house into the freezing night. The wind cut through my thin coat, but the air felt cleaner than it had inside. I glanced back once at the windows glowing with warm light and shadows of the family still sitting at the table. Then I turned away. That was no longer my home. My home, whatever it would be next, lay somewhere out there in the dark. Over the next few days, we stayed in a cheap motel near the edge of Cleveland, with peeling wallpaper and a heater that rattled. I went out to sing in small bars, earning $60 here, $40 there, sometimes a little extra in tips. I watched every dollar like it was gold, trying to stretch it far enough to keep us fed and sheltered. I knew we needed something more permanent than a motel room. Leo needed a bed that didn't smell like old smoke and strangers' memories. I needed a place where my songs didn't just echo off cracked walls. One gray afternoon, as I walked back from a diner with a few crumpled dollar bills in my pocket, I saw a strange sign by the side of the road near an old industrial yard. It said, "Old train cars for sale from $150. Office inside." I stopped. I don't know why that sign pulled at me, but it did. Maybe I was tired of normal doors and normal houses that never felt like mine. Maybe I was desperate enough to believe that something broken and old, sold for so little, could still become a home. I took a deep breath, tightened my grip on my handbag, and walked toward the yard, not knowing that one rusty train for $150 was about to change everything. When I walked through the gate into the yard, the world felt different. The motel, the cold streets of Cleveland, my father's hard eyes at the Christmas table, all of that seemed far away for a moment. In front of me, on a stretch of dirty ground and short tracks, stood a row of old train cars. Some were long and dark red, others were dull brown, all of them scarred with rust and time. They looked forgotten, like they had been waiting years for someone to give them a reason to exist again. I felt, in a strange way, like I understood them. I stepped into the small office by the entrance, where a man was sitting behind a desk covered in papers and coffee cups. He had kind, tired eyes and a name tag that said Ben Carter. He looked up when the door creaked open. "Can I help you?" he asked. "I saw the sign outside," I said, "about the old train cars for sale." He nodded, stood up, and walked to the window. "Yep. Most people just come to look and laugh, then leave. They say the trains are too far gone." He glanced back at me. "You looking for something to scrap or something to use?" I hesitated, then heard myself say, "I'm looking for a home." His eyebrows rose a little, but he didn't smile like it was a joke. "Come on," he said. "Let me show you." We walked out into the yard. The air smelled like metal and old rain. Ben led me to a shorter car near the back. Its once green paint was now a tired, patchy mess, and one of the steps was bent. But the shape of it, the long, narrow body with small windows, reminded me of a tiny house lying on its side, waiting. "This one's in bad shape, so we marked it at the low end," Ben said. "You could probably get it for $150. Floors are mostly solid. Roof doesn't leak too bad. Needs a lot of love, though." I rested my hand on the cold metal. In my mind, I saw Leo's little bed in the corner, blankets, and a small lamp. I saw a table where I could write songs, a place to put my guitar, hooks on the walls for coats. It wasn't normal, it wasn't safe in the way my father would approve of, but it felt real. It felt like me. Ben studied my face. "You serious about this?" he asked. I swallowed. $150 was a huge piece of the little money I had left. But what was the other option? Another month in a motel, with no real future? At least a train car could be ours. It wouldn't be someone else's room, someone else's rules. "Yes," I said quietly. "I'm serious. I want this one." We went back to the office and filled out a simple bill of sale. I handed over the worn bills, feeling each dollar leave me like a small breath. My wallet felt light, but my heart felt strangely heavy and hopeful at the same time. "You can rent a small patch of land on the back lot," Ben said. "We've got water hookups and electricity. It's not fancy, but it's cheap, and we don't bother anyone who's trying to make something of their own." "That's exactly what I'm trying to do," I told him. 2 days later, after moving our few things out of the motel, Leo and I stepped into our new home for the first time. The inside of the train car was worse than I expected. Dust everywhere, broken seat frames, torn fabric hanging in strips, and spiderwebs thick in the corners. But there was also solid floor under my boots and long walls that I could paint any color I wanted. Leo ran down the middle, his boots clanging on the metal, his laughter bouncing off the walls. "Is this really our house, Mom?" he asked, eyes wide. "Yes," I said, feeling my chest tighten. "This is our train house. We're going to make it nice." The first weeks were hard. I sang in bars at night to bring in $60 or $80 at a time, then worked on the train during the day. I scrubbed the floors on my hands and knees, my fingers raw and red. I pulled out old seat frames with tools Ben lent me. I wiped the windows until light actually came through them. Ben's friend Laura, who worked in the office, brought us an old mattress and 2 blankets. We put the mattress at one end for Leo. At the other end, I laid down a thin foam pad for myself. We bought a small secondhand heater for $40 and a tiny wooden table for $15. Each time I handed over money, it felt like a risk, but it also felt like a vote of faith in our future. Slowly, the train began to change. I painted the walls a soft cream color with cheap paint I found on sale. I swept the last of the dust into a pile and threw it out with shaking hands, as if I was throwing away the last bits of my old life. One afternoon, while moving a box near the far wall, my hand knocked against something that sounded hollow. Not just a normal wall sound, but a sharp, empty echo. I froze and tapped again. The same hollow note came back to me. Strange, I murmured. Kneeling down, I saw a small metal panel at the base of the wall, almost hidden behind a support beam. The screws were old and dark, half covered in grime, like no one had touched them in years. I reached out and brushed my fingers over it. A small chill ran through me, the kind that comes when you know something important is close. I thought about trying to open it right then, but I glanced at the clock on my phone. I had to get ready for another singing job across town if I wanted to keep paying for this place. I pulled my hand back and stood up. Later, I told myself, when I have more time, when I'm not so tired. I had no idea then how that little hidden panel would change everything. All I knew was that I had a rusty train, a son who believed in me, and a fragile, stubborn hope that this strange metal box could become a real home in America. 7 weeks passed before I finally touched that hidden panel again. 7 weeks of cold mornings, late nights, and slow change. By then, the train car no longer looked like a pile of junk. It still had scars from its old life, but it was starting to feel like a true home for me and Leo. In those weeks, I fell into a steady rhythm. I woke up early, made simple breakfast for Leo on our tiny stove, and walked him to school. Then I came back to the yard and worked on the train until my back ached. I painted the last brown patches on the walls, scrubbed old stains off the floor, and fixed a broken step with wood that Ben helped me cut. In the evenings, I sang in small bars across Cleveland, coming home with pockets full of crumpled dollar bills and tired feet. Every night when I counted the money, I thought about how close we lived to the edge and how far I was from the comfortable life my father believed was the only right way. Still, our little train life was growing. Leo started calling it the train house like it was its proper name. He drew pictures of it at school, showing it with smoke coming out of a pretend chimney and stars above it. Laura brought us a small rug with blue stripes, and we laid it near the table, so Leo could sit there and play with his toy cars. Sometimes, when the heater was working well and the lights were soft, I would stand in the middle of the car and think, we did this. We made something out of almost nothing. It was on a quiet Tuesday morning that I heard that hollow sound again. Leo was at school, the sky was gray, and a light rain tapped on the metal roof. I was moving a box of old tools along the sidewall when my hand knocked against the same spot as before. That strange, empty echo answered me, like a knock from the past. I set the box down and knelt on the floor. The little metal panel sat low on the wall, half hidden by a beam and some flaking paint. This time, I didn't walk away. I was still tired, still broke, still unsure of what the next month would look like, but curiosity and a quiet, sharp feeling pushed me forward. I fetched a small screwdriver from Ben's toolbox. The screws were stiff with age, but they moved slowly under my hand. One by one, they came loose. My heart started to beat faster, though I didn't know why. When the last screw fell into my palm, I took a breath and pulled the panel away. Behind it was darkness and dust. I reached my hand inside, fingers brushing against cold metal and rough cloth. My fingertips found the edge of something wrapped. I pulled it out slowly and sat down cross-legged on the floor with it in my lap. The cloth was old but still strong. I unfolded it and found a small tin box and a worn notebook tied with string. My hands shook a little as I opened the notebook first. On the first page, in neat handwriting that leaned slightly to the right, it said, "To the one who finds this. My name is Evelyn Rose, and this train once carried my whole life." I stared at the name. A woman. Another woman whose life had been tied to this same iron shell. I turned the page and began to read. Evelyn wrote about traveling across America to sing in clubs and halls, from big cities like New York and Chicago to small towns I had never heard of. She wrote about nights on the tracks, about long rides, about being tired but never wanting to stop. Her words felt like echoes of my own thoughts, sent forward in time. At the end of the notebook, she had written one last message. If you are reading this, then the train has found a new soul. Maybe you're a singer too. Maybe you are lost like I was. I cannot carry my dream forever, but I can pass on its weight. What is in the box is for you. Use it to keep going. My breath caught in my throat. Slowly, I set the notebook aside and opened the tin box. Inside were stacks of bills, real money, arranged in neat bundles. I touched them like they might disappear. I counted, whispering the numbers to myself. 100, 200, 500. By the time I was done, I was holding $3,800. Underneath the dollars was a small envelope, and inside it were old 20-pound and 10-pound notes, adding up to 260 pounds. I knew they were British pounds from the symbols and the faces printed on them. For a long moment, I just sat there on the floor of the train, the open box in front of me. The heater hummed softly. The rain tapped on the roof. My heart pounded in my chest, and my eyes burned with tears I had been holding back since the night my father told me to leave. "Thank you, Evelyn," I whispered. "You don't know me, but you just changed my life." That money didn't make me rich. It didn't fix everything, but it gave me something I had not felt in a long time. Space to breathe. I could pay the land rent for many months. I could buy better clothes for shows, a good pair of boots, and food without counting every cent. I could even think about recording my own songs in a real studio instead of just dreaming about it. As I closed the tin box and held the notebook to my chest, I felt less alone. Another woman had walked a road like mine, and she had left a piece of her dream hidden in this train for someone like me to find. She believed that a stranger, another singer, would come along. She believed enough to leave dollars and pounds and a written blessing inside a wall. I pressed my hand against the cool metal of the train and made a quiet promise. I would honor her gift. I would keep singing. I would turn this rusty old car into something bright and full of music, a place where my son could grow without fear. This train was no longer just scrap metal. It was our home and the bridge between Evelyn's story and mine. A full year passed after I opened that hidden panel, but sometimes it felt like a lifetime. The woman I was on that Christmas night in Ohio seemed far away from the woman I saw in the mirror now. I was still the same Grace, still a singer, still a mother, still living in a rusty old train car on a rented patch of American ground. But inside, something was different. I had proof that my dream mattered, not just to me, but to someone who had lived long before me. Evelyn's money and words had become a kind of quiet engine under my life, pushing me forward. With the $3,800 I found, I made careful choices. The first thing I did was pay the land rent for the train house for a full year, so I knew Leo and I would not be forced to move again anytime soon. I bought better shoes and a warm coat, not to look fancy, but to feel strong when I stepped onto a stage. I spent part of it on a small recording session in a basic studio in Cleveland, where a man named David helped me record 3 songs I had written in the train at night. One was about being sent away at Christmas, one was about the train house, and one was about a woman who left a gift in the wall for someone she had never met. The first time I heard my own voice on a local radio station, I almost dropped the dish I was washing. Leo ran to the little radio and turned it up so loud the walls shook. "Mom, it's you," he shouted, dancing in his socks on the striped rug. I laughed and cried at the same time, wiping my hands on a towel and pressing it to my mouth to quiet the sobs. For the first time, I felt like my songs had stepped out into the world without me and found their own feet. Words spread slowly, like a small fire catching on dry wood. People in Cleveland started to know my name. Then someone played my song on a station in another state. Then a woman from a small label in New York City called me. Her name was Rachel, and her voice sounded bright and fast, like the city itself. "Grace," she said, "your story is powerful. A train house, a hidden box, getting thrown out on Christmas. People feel that. We'd like to bring you to New York for a TV interview and a live performance. Nothing huge yet, but a good start. We'll cover your tickets and a hotel for you and your son. For a second, I could not answer. New York felt like another world, a place I had only seen in movies and music videos. I looked over at Leo, who was drawing another picture of our train, this one with musical notes floating above it. Yes, I said finally. I'll come, and I'll bring my boy. The night of the interview, the studio lights were brighter than anything I had ever seen. They did my hair and makeup, put a simple dark dress on me, and gave Leo a nice shirt. He sat just off stage, where he could see everything. The host, a tall man named Michael, smiled at me like we were old friends. So, Grace, he said once the camera started, you went from being thrown out of your father's house at Christmas to living in a train, and then to being here on our stage. How did that happen? I told the story as simply as I could. My father's hard words, my sister's cold smile, the motel, the $150 rusty train, the hidden panel, the money, the songs. I did not try to sound clever. I just told it like I always do, as if I were sitting at a small table, talking to one person who needed to hear it.
Then I sang.
Under those hot lights, with people watching from all over America, I closed my eyes and went back to my train house in my mind. I sang for Evelyn. I sang for Leo. I sang for the girl I used to be, standing in my father's dining room, holding back tears. After the show, my phone buzzed in my hand. The number on the screen was my father's house. My stomach tightened. For a moment, I thought about letting it ring out, but old habits are hard to break. I stepped into a quiet hallway and answered.
Hello, I said.
There was a pause, then his voice. Older, more tired, but still his. Grace. Yes, Dad. We saw you on TV, he said. I could hear the sound of the show replaying in the background. The whole country talking about my house, about me. He cleared his throat. We joked for you, you know. That night. We wanted to scare you, not make you really go. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. For a moment, I felt like I was back at that Christmas table, small and shaking. But then another feeling rose up, stronger. The woman who had built a life in a broken train and found her own path. You didn't joke, I said softly but clearly. You told me to leave. You meant it enough that I believed you. It hurt. It still hurts. I took a slow breath. But I'm glad I left. I found my place. I found my voice. I found a way to live that feels true. He was quiet for a long time. I could hear the faint sound of my song playing again on the TV. I'm proud of you, he said at last, like the words were heavy in his mouth. I'm proud of me too, I answered. And I'm proud of Leo. If you ever want to see the train house, you can. It's small and it's strange, but it's ours. It's home. We didn't fix everything with that call. Years don't heal in a few minutes. But when I hung up, I felt lighter. I walked back to where Leo waited, and he ran into my arms. Did you do good, Mom? He asked. I did real, I said, holding him close. That's better than good. In that moment, in a TV studio far from the yard where our little train stood, I knew the truth. This was my story now. Not my father's, not my sister's, not even Evelyn's.
Mine.
A train house in America, a notebook, a hidden box, a voice that would not be quiet anymore.